This is the introduction, the very beginning of working with this book, Rhythmic Patterns by Cusatis. Your copy is not going to look like this. This is an older copy, but the book is called Rhythmic Patterns. And we're starting with pages 4 through 6. Now, there are a bunch of exercises written here. For example, exercise 1, A and B, is using the snare drum and the small tom. A is doing it with your left hand, B is doing it with your right hand. Now, it doesn't really matter because all these exercises are doing on these 3 pages is doing every combination between every surface, one surface to the next, or one surface to the next. So every 2 surface combination between, well, they get a little more complicated in different patterns. But it's really just, what we're going to do in this video is look at each one of these patterns in at least the German and the French grip for now. And I'm just going to discuss how I want you to move from between the surfaces. Okay, so let's start with what's going to be your right hand. It's my left hand. So right hand, snare drum to floor tom. Snare drum to floor tom, right hand. Okay, remember I'm a lefty, so this is backwards. So we set up, and it's as if we're in German grip. We're going to play a stroke, right? And then, so there's 2 ways I want you to do these. I'll start with the way where we're going to play 8th notes. So if you remember what we did stroke tap combo in the German, right? So we're basically going to do that. So we're going to play a stroke, and when we come out and play the tap, what we're going to do is this point we're going to set up, so we're released, except that instead of coming back and striking this way, we're going to turn over and go into the French grip. Now when I talk about this, what I talk about is setups, arcs, and drops, okay? So what I want you to think about as you go from here to here is your arm simply moving and now dropping this way, okay? And setups, releases, arcs, and drops. So remember we said this is the release in the German grip. This just hangs. We must feel the release. And then what you're going to do is move the hand as if it's the St. Louis arch, a parabolic arch between surfaces. So set it up, turn, and drop. And we're going to, if you remember this idea when we started the German grip of this, if we were to come up, continue, and just turn, now we're going to be in the French grip, okay? So from German into French, that's the setup, the arc, and the drop, okay? Now what I want you to think about primarily is the motion of the hand and the up and down idea. In other words, even though I'm moving to my left, or you'll be moving to your right, the idea is up and drop, okay? Now when we come out, here we are in French grip, we're going to release just a little bit in French grip, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to come up, and we're going to essentially turn the whole arm over and let it fall. So the idea is, again, we're not striking, we're not whipping at the top of the motion, we're setting up and dropping. And you can just do this, by the way, and feel the wrist hang, drop, feel the wrist hang, and drop. Now, what's happening is the motion is this motion. So it's from the shoulder. So even though I'm coming up here, what I want to think about is as I set up, I'm moving from here and dropping. As I set up, I'm moving from here and dropping. Set up, release, drop. Set up, release, drop. Okay? And now we're going to do this again, 50 beats per minute, and we're going to count the ands, the setups. That empty space is the most important part of this process. So, and, drop, and, drop, and, drop, and, drop. Okay? Now, good. So, lots of things to think about here. And what I want you to do when you begin this is to play the tap. So, you're going to play the tap as well. So, even though what's written in the book is quarter notes, you're going to be playing 8th notes. And the reason is that when you play the tap, you can feel the release. And I want you to feel the release. So, and 1, and 2, and 3. Okay. Now, when we were doing this on the pad, remember, we wanted to get a big pop at the end of the motion, right? We wanted the stick to come back up here. We don't, at this point in the real world, that we don't need to do that anymore. The reason that we did that on the pad was to gain a sense of how much response we could get at the end of each stroke, okay? So now we're just going to let this happen and catch it in the hand. Yes, we still want one stroke. We want the stick to pop and come off the head, but we don't need to create, so that we don't need or we don't want, okay? So now, when we release from the French grip, remember when we were playing a tap, we would release the whole thumb like this. Now we're going to be moving too fast to do that. So you might start with a little bit of that thumb release, but immediately what you want to do is think about the entire motion of this arm coming over and being here, dropping into this side. So we release, come up, turn, and drop. Notice the position of my elbow. Here the arm is in, here the arm turns, and again we're back to this neutral position in the German grip. Okay, so that's the exercise moving from snare drum to floor tom. Now let's go floor tom to rack tom. It's going to be the same thing, German to French. Okay, so same exact idea. Notice the sound of the drums. By dropping, by simply allowing my arm to fall, I'm getting the fullest, richest sound out of the drum that it can make. It sounds beautiful and big and sonorous, but it's not, I'm not wailing on it. I'm just allowing the drum to resonate from the weight of my arm falling. As with everything that we've done, it's about letting things happen, allowing the sound to come out of the drum. We can always turn up the volume and throw with more downward force. But for now, I want you to just feel what it feels like to just literally through this setup, very particular setup, and drop. Feel what it feels like to just let the stick drop, okay? So basically, movement, right arm, rack tom to floor tom, we're going, French, German, French on the floor tom, German on the rack tom. Now, there's another way you can do these exercises, which is exactly how it's written in the book. And that would just be quarter note, and so on the and, we don't play a tap. Right? If we were just saying moving between these two. That's more difficult actually to do, even though it's simpler, there are fewer notes involved, because you're not necessarily feeling the release in time, okay? So start with playing everything with eighth notes. So now, last move on the right hand between snare drum and rack tom. Now let's say we start in German here. Now we come up, and we go up here and release. Okay? Something's buzzing. Now, here you're going German, and then up here you're releasing, and you're playing French. Now it's the same idea, even though you're not going here. Here it's maybe easier to feel that parabola and that drop into the French grip. Here, you're still dropping in the French, but now you're moving this way, right? And now here we release in the French, and again, we turn and drop. Notice the arm, here the arm is in, here the arm is out. Okay? So all of this is moving together, releasing together, coming up together, and releasing together. Okay? So that's moves, pages 4 through 6, the basics of what's happening in the German and French grips. Of course, if we were to do it in this hand, in the German grip, same thing. Moving here, coming back here. Now, this might feel awkward, especially with the hi-hat being here. And by the way, there are feet written as part of these exercises. For the moment, don't play the feet, don't worry about the feet, okay? And if we do this on the left hand, we're now German here and French here. Okay? Moving between here, French, and German. The goal is to feel the release. You're not going to release this the whole way. You're going to let it go a little and just let the wrist hang. Just like here, you let the wrist hang. Let the wrist hang here, turn it over, you're back in German. And one other thing I want to mention is now we're making larger motions. So we want to think a little bit more about moving from the pelvis. So when we come here, we're opening up our strike zone that we've developed on one surface. Now we're opening it up here. So we're going to move not like this. We're going to think about going here, okay? Now, obviously this is a very exaggerated move compared to how it's going to be in the real world, but I want you to think about when a boxer punches, they don't punch like this, they punch like this, right? They drive from the floor and throw their weight and they move their whole body into that punch. So it's the same concept here as we move from here to here. Feel, at least for the moment when we're moving really slow, feel this move from here. When you come from, say, one move we didn't work on is, so here we could do German-French, or we could do German-German. You see how I'm moving from my pelvis, right? When we go from this drum to this drum, we're going to come from the pelvis and go this way. So, see how I'm moving from here, so that I'm going to the drum. I'm not, you know, the worst thing we often see is drummers who, when they go this way, go backwards with their body, right? They want to go forwards and their body goes backwards. So let everything move together and get into this idea of moving from the pelvis. Turn, drop, boom, boom. Move forward, come back, like so. All right? So that's it for pages 4 through 6.